heard the engine before I saw the car. It was moving too slowly, which doesn't make sense on an empty street at night. Then it stopped, right next to me. 4 men inside, engine still running, and I was completely alone. Welcome back to Dr. Creep. Tonight, 3 women, 3 walks home, 3 moments they will never forget. The third story is the one that keeps me up at night, but you'll understand why when we get there.
Headphones on, lights off, say goodbye to sleep. Let's begin.
It was January. Midwinter, the kind of night where the snow muffles everything and the street feels like the whole world has gone quiet just for you. I was 22, walking home through a neighborhood I knew like the back of my hand. I'd taken that street 100 times, maybe more. I wasn't scared. I had no reason to be. I'd been sick for 3 days. A nasty cold that had kept me in bed left my voice raw and my face pale and my whole body running on empty. But I had to get home, so I put my hood up and I walked. I noticed the car the way you notice something wrong before you can name what it is. Too slow, moving at the pace of someone who isn't going anywhere, just following the curb. Then it stopped, right next to me, engine still running. I counted 4 of them, and I stood there, completely still, running through my options in about half a second. Running would tell them everything, screaming would tell them more. The street was empty, no houses with lights on, no one to hear me. So I did the only thing I could think of. I turned around, pulled my hood down, and I looked straight at them. I let them see my face, all of it. The dark circles, the raw skin, the exhaustion. I cleared my throat and it came out hoarse and broken. I heard one of them say something to the driver. I couldn't make out all of it. Then one word. Clear. Sick. And then, not worth it. They drove off because I looked too sick to bother with. I've never been so grateful for a cold in my life. The car drove away. I stood on that street until I couldn't see the taillights anymore. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I kept thinking, what if I hadn't been sick that night? What if I'd looked healthy? What if I'd looked like someone easy? I still think about the way they kept the engine running. I never walked that street alone again. Not once, not ever. Sometimes survival isn't about being strong or fast or prepared. Sometimes it's about a cold you didn't ask for and the courage to not look away. The next story has no car, no group, just one man and a woman who learned that the most dangerous thing isn't being followed. It's realizing it too late. It was a Thursday, 11 p.m. I was on the last train home, half reading something on my phone, half watching the stations blur past. The carriage was almost empty. An older woman a few seats ahead of me, and a man at the far end. I noticed him the way you notice something you can't explain. He wasn't staring at me, not directly, but I felt it. His attention was pointed at me. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Like every part of him was focused on me, even when his eyes weren't. I put my phone away, got a better grip on my bag, and I watched him without looking like I was watching him. My stop came.
This is Dr. Creep. If your fear level is rising, hit like. If the nightmares persist, subscribe. Help is on the way.
I waited. 1 beat, 2 beats longer than I needed to. He didn't move. I stood up and stepped off the train. The doors started to close. And then he jumped up. He slipped through just before they shut, like he'd simply remembered it was his stop. My heart was going so fast I could feel it in my throat, but I didn't run. I knew better than to run. Running on an empty platform at 11 p.m. is an announcement. It tells him exactly where you are, exactly how afraid you are. So I walked, steady, toward the exit stairs. He was ahead of me now. Then he slowed down, stretched his arms above his head, looked at his phone, all the small performances of someone pretending they have nowhere to be. He wanted me to pass him. He wanted to be behind me. So I slowed down too. We moved through that station like two people in a silent negotiation, him pretending to have no destination, me pretending not to notice. At the top of the stairs, I made a decision. I stopped walking, turned completely around, and I looked straight at him. He froze, looked up at the ceiling, found something fascinating in the middle distance, then, without a word, turned around and walked back down the stairs, back toward the platform, in the completely opposite direction he'd been heading. And just before he disappeared onto the platform, he looked up at me. The expression on his face wasn't embarrassment. It was hatred, pure and open and ugly. The mask was completely gone, and what was underneath it terrified me more than anything else that had happened that night. I walked home fast, checking behind me the whole way, and I kept thinking, he didn't go home after that. He went back to the platform, and he waited for the next train, for the next woman reading her phone at 11 p.m. I hope she noticed him before he noticed her. 2 stories, 2 women who made it home. I'm not that sure about the last one. And what makes her story different from the others, what makes it the one I still think about, is that she was walking through that dark alone without something most of us don't even think about: her sight. I should tell you something about me before I tell you what happened. I'm almost completely blind. I have about 2% of normal vision, enough to see shapes, enough to navigate with my cane if I know the route. Not enough for darkness. Never enough for darkness. It was a Friday night. I was waiting outside a bar for my boyfriend. He was supposed to pick me up because the only way home ran through a forest, steep and narrow and pitch black after sundown. He was late, then later. Then not answering. I was so angry I could barely think straight. When the group of men came out of the restaurant next door, I told myself I wasn't afraid of them. They were drunk and loud, and they looked at me the way I didn't want to be looked at. But I told myself I wasn't afraid. Then I felt a hand on the back of my neck. The smell of alcohol, a face close to mine, words I won't repeat. I told them to leave me alone, and somehow they laughed and walked away like it was a game they were bored of, like they'd be back. I should have stayed, I know that now, but I was 19 and furious, and I told myself the forest was fine. I'd walked that path before, in the daylight. I started walking. 10 meters from where the forest path began, my phone died. And in the silence that followed, I heard them laughing behind me, close. I didn't have to turn around. I already knew. They were calling out to me, telling me to stop, to wait, that they just wanted to talk. I ran, or I tried to, running blind through a pitch-black forest path with drunk men behind you and a cane that keeps catching on roots. That's not running. That's controlled falling. That's moving forward and praying. I missed the path. I could feel it under my feet, the way the ground changed, the way the sound shifted around me. I'd gone off the track, and I couldn't go back because they were already there, between me and the road. I stopped moving, stood completely still in the dark, tried to control my breathing so they couldn't hear where I was. That's when I saw the headlights. A single car moving slowly down the road. It stopped. The passenger door opened. A voice, young, calm, said he'd seen the men following me from further up the road, said he'd take me home. I stood there in the dark, running the calculation that no woman should ever have to run. A stranger in a car I couldn't see clearly, against a group of men somewhere in the trees, still laughing. I got in the car. He drove me home without a word. Didn't ask for my number. Didn't ask to come in. When we reached my door, he said good night like it was nothing, like it was just something you do. I've thought about that night almost every day since. About the men in the forest, about the stranger who stopped. I don't go out alone after dark anymore. I have a guide dog now. But some nights, when the house is quiet and I can't sleep, I still hear the laughing, and it still comes from somewhere behind me. If you have a story, something that happened to you walking home, something you've never told anyone, send it to my email in the channel description. You are not alone in your fear. If you made it to the end, you're one of us. Subscribe. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep the darkness at bay. And whatever you do tonight, don't walk alone.